Let me tell you guys about Belly Up Sports. Belly Up Sports is the internet sports bar. Go ahead and check out their website, www.bellyupsports.com, to read some great articles from great writers all across the country, from hockey, baseball, golf, soccer, you name it. Belly Up Sports is the premier, not your average website.
Episode 4, City Blues. Is the second-year club, St. Louis City, are under pressure to build a winning culture. A rematch against Sporting KC raises the stakes. So it is going to be centered around St. Louis SC. Obviously, if you're going to have some sort of thing to connect with it, probably their biggest rival right now, which is their neighbor from Kansas. Kansas City is so weird. It's Missouri, but it's also Kansas at the same time. It's
Yeah.
it's bizarre, but it's their closest rival, and I actually like that there is a rivalry. Like sometimes I feel like they kind of force rivalries just to make it happen. Austin FC, just
By
to
the
make
way, watch them get dunked on by Parker in this episode was hilarious.
yeah. So it was just one of those. Like, all right, but yeah, St. Louis SC. Obviously, this is the year before it was, the debutantes of the MLS. Everybody was intrigued by this team. St. Louis is a very interesting city in general. A city that I would say probably like misses having a professional team in their city. Also home to one of the best college soccer programs in St. Louis University. Only reason I know that is obviously because of Baji Marana. But yeah, so St. Louis, I don't know if it's a soccer town. I know Greg Berhalter tried to suck the dick of St. Louis by saying it was the capital, the soccer capital of the. I don't even know what actually I'd probably say New Jersey might be the capital, but just because of all the players that have come out of that region.
Yeah.
But yeah, St. Louis MLS expansion team, obviously women ownership group. I brushed that off like it's so disrespectful, but I actually do not mean it in that way. But yeah, women's ownership group, really cool. They got the Purina dog chow sponsor and all that. But obviously, impressive first season, right? They get first place in the Western Conference, only to get immediately eliminated in the first round by Sporting KC, a team that looked atrocious. Jose. But yeah, we'll start off from there. St. Louis City.
Yeah, I actually like the opening to it, right? If you've first off, I've never been to City Park. I want to go to that stadium. It's very much on the bucket list of mine. For the fan base, for like you mentioned before, right? The lack of a professional sports presence there prior to St. Louis City coming in, for a number of reasons, the city was starving for something like this. And yeah, like the one the I say the factor that kind of sticks out with them, right, is in a great way. I think they could have touched on it probably even a little bit more with the female-led ownership group. I think that it's pretty cool to see that. You don't get a lot of that in MLS, really anywhere probably around the globe. And so, being kind of unique in that way is pretty damn awesome. But just beyond that, man, like getting a sense of what Carnell liked about it, prior to getting let go. The sporting director, right? Getting just getting kind of a top level view of what makes St. Louis, not just for the team, but for the city. And of course, we got, Tim Parker's POV on it, why he was so excited to kind of be there for that inaugural season. It's dope, man. Honestly, like I find myself now wanting to try and go visit that stadium as soon as I can, just to get a sense of it for myself. But I feel like they did a really good job of kind of painting the picture of what it means to that community, to that fan base. And as far as Midwest towns are considered, man, it's got to be up there, right? As one of like the premier fan bases and venues. And the rivalry, which they touched on all throughout this episode. Again, like it didn't feel like the hell is real derby, right? I mean, that episode was like it almost felt touchy-feely. Like, hey, this is something you don't want to piss off the other side. You kind of want to walk on eggshells a little bit when you talk about this rivalry. This didn't feel like that per se. However, you could still sense, right, the back and forth with the storytelling. Even Johnny Russell being a very prominent part of this episode. On the SKC side, we'll talk about that too. But yeah, man, I think the opening, 15-ish minutes, 20 minutes, just really kind of painting the picture, setting the scene. Solid job.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that SK, the St. Louis City. I'm so getting confused with these teams. Overwhelming 2024, right? Obviously, nothing went well for them. Obviously, it led to them sacking Carnell, who now is with Philadelphia, if anybody is keeping track on him. Um, the question will be: was his sacking warranted? I mean, this is second year coach, literally had probably the best start to a season despite not winning an MLS Cup from it, but still not a pretty good first season for an expansion team. But I think it's a sentence that I've heard for a long time. Shout out to Draftneck Mark, he's a baseball content creator, but he has a phrase that I've been using ever since, which is if you're not getting better, you are getting worse. And I say that wholeheartedly, and I say that because it applies to every sport. If you are not trying to get better in your offseason, regardless of how good your team is, if you're not trying to add one or two pieces to that mix, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse because the competition around you is getting better. And I think that that's exactly what happened with St. Louis, at least in 2024. I think they thought that, hey, we have a team here. We don't got to do much changes. And unfortunately, they didn't make any significant changes. I don't know if there was any changes specifically, but nothing significant enough, which then led to Carnell getting sacked and obviously them making very bold moves to try to keep something afloat for St. Louis.
I think they were spoiled, bro. Realistically, like if you look at this, compare them to Cincinnati. How bad was Cincinnati coming into this league, right? And they gave Noonan the longest leash ever, right? 'Cause I think it requires that. I think had St. Louis not seen that much success in year one, I don't think they would have sacked Carnell year two. Really don't think so. I think it was a matter of the bar had been set. They expected to see progress pretty dramatically, right? Like pretty soon after the fact, the next season over. And when they couldn't replicate what they did in 2023, it almost just felt like, hey, this is what we're supposed to do, right? Like this is not a knock on the sporting director, or the club ownership. I don't know how experienced they are in their respective roles. I haven't done the research yet, but it just felt like this is a move they have to make because the pressure from the fan base, the pressure from maybe anywhere inside of that group just demanded so, right? And I think Carnell, to be honest, Tim Parker included, got the short end of the stick. And again, I don't know if those moves even dramatically level up St. Louis. For those who are following Philadelphia Union in 2025, outside of the random one-off, and I will call it random because to me Philly is a good team. Outside of the random Nashville result, Carnell seems to be gelling pretty well with his team in Philadelphia. And that's, again, historically a front office and an ownership group who does not supply their manager with the best of tools, the best of resources, kind of has to make do with what he has, so to speak. So I don't know. I feel like if Carnell ends up being successful in Philly and St. Louis can't find a way to replicate 2023, either this season or the next one after that, I don't know. Might be a little bit of regret there. I think to me, it felt like a rushed decision. And I wasn't saying this last season. We talked about St. Louis a lot on my own channel, right? Like the draw kings of the Midwest. Like how many games did they draw like in the first 15, 20 last season? It was insane. But that's the thing, right? Yeah, he couldn't convert draws to wins, but I don't know if that necessarily warranted him being fired considering how new this team and this franchise really are. So it felt rushed. It just felt like something that they thought they had to do because for whatever reason they weren't able to replicate 2023.
Yeah, then obviously you got to act like you're doing something in some sense, right? And we'll talk about Tim Parker in a bit, but I mean Carnell, I feel like you just had to look like you're doing something. I don't know about the speculation of Carnell losing locker room. I mean, if you're a coach that's quote unquote viewed as a hard ass, I mean, it comes with the territory. I think it's one of those things where you're probably motherfucking him at least behind the scenes, but when it's time to work kind of thing. It's one of those you may not like him, but you do respect him kind of thing. If that is the relationship, I don't know about losing the locker room. If anything, the locker room was probably very much just frustrated, not being able to get results at all throughout that season. Obviously, either being a buck short or just a stupid slip up could cost everything for St. Louis and having a different conversation. And obviously, Kansas City, whole other ordeal their season was. we won't really talk too much about them just because it's not much else to say. But I will say, if you want to go ahead and make this the segment where we slash Peter Vermes, I'm all for it. If you guys don't know, Peter Vermes, he is the coach, GM, and I will give him the title of terrorist of Sporting Kansas City because, my God, how is this guy still having a job? As a matter of fact, they brought it up. Yeah, like maybe we should fire him, but that's literally what the owner said. They're like, yeah,
Well, the thing is,
maybe.
you have to have like defined better options out there too. And what I will say is there probably are. There probably were some options, right, all throughout last season that they could have gone after, at least in one or two. Um, but like I don't know, bro. To me, he's got such a stranglehold over the front office, over the impact, technically, right, by assuming so many roles. He's probably never going anywhere. Like I just don't see it. I don't. He is Jerry Jones for the Sporting Kansas City. That's
And
basically what
how
he
he
is.
got his job too, because I don't believe he was a coach initially. I think he was just I think he was like somewhere he worked he's obviously within Sporting Kansas City. I don't know if he was like an assistant or anything like that, or he was a scout. I don't know what the hell exactly he had, but then they're like, "F it, we need a coach," just
Yeah.
and and
And don't
and
get me wrong, he's qualified, but at some point, right? Like it's a results oriented business. Like you gotta get the results. And I think was it in 2023 when he had that crazy comeback, right?
yeah, I mean they started terrible in
Mhm.
2023. Obviously made it to the wild card, won the wild card, and then upset your rival, St. Louis. I think, as a matter of fact, it was a sweep. So,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think maybe that's where you get the leeway from. Like, hey, it may not be great, and I mean, they obviously throw out the injury excuse, right? That it's always the good excuse to have. Like, hey, I had this many injuries this season, so we were gonna be bad, kind of thing. But yeah, Peter Vermes, he's a probably very safe. It's probably still gonna be a safe person. I'll be shocked if Sporting Kansas City fires him because they've had ample of opportunities to do so. And but at the same time, you made a valid point. Who would you go after as far as the coach goes? Because I mean, Kansas City, it's not one of those like you just plug in the guy and you hope for it. It's going to be a project.
Yeah. 100%. Whoever, if someone were to come in and replace Peter Vermes, it legitimately would be a massive project. Like you probably have to you're talking about switching a manager and probably a younger manager coming in and having to retool that entire roster. And
Not
some
only
of
that,
that's
but you
already,
have to find a GM too.
yeah, 100%. And so I think that like it's almost like, dude, there's too much to change. Let's just try to ride this out until there is no point of return, right? And then we'll maybe we'll overhaul the entire thing. Who knows? But yeah, bro, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where he's got his footprint everywhere, right? He's got his hands on everything. I don't know how quickly you can just like get him out and find somebody to come in and keep the ship afloat. And then you think about maybe who knows, maybe some of the respect he commands in the locker room. I know guys like Johnny Russell aren't there anymore, and he was a major part of this episode. Um, and I think that Johnny Russell, not to pivot too hard away from Vermees, but I think he's like very because if you know about Russell in 2025, he doesn't have a team currently. Um, he was kind of a bright spot in a very dark time for Sporting Kansas City. But I will say like maybe that's the start of that, right? Not bringing him back, finding a way to kind of, again, they moved on from Pulido, moved on from some of these old head pieces, right? So maybe it's slowly happening in Kansas City if the results continue to not be there. Um, I don't know, man. Like it's all speculation because at the end of the day, like Vermees just has, I don't know, a dictatorship he's running potentially in Sporting Kansas City. Like he's probably it's crazy, bro. He could have some of the worst results in the league, and I don't think I'll ever say that his seat is hot.
Hmm.
I don't think so. Like I just feel like he's gonna find a way to keep his job no matter what.
I agree to that. And you mentioned Johnny Russell, and I think that's perfect way to segue into that one. This is the two players that they feature in this episode both are in very similar situations, which is obviously contract negotiations. So this is kind of where you're kind of hearing their perspective of how both of them would like to stay with their clubs. And obviously, we're talking about Johnny Russell and Tim Parker. Johnny Russell, I think at least the hesitancy for him is obviously is he's old. 34 years old, young, super young, prime of his life, some may say. Um,
I
But
second that. I second that.
but yeah, I mean, obviously, when you get up in the 30s, it's not easy to sell yourself to a long-term deal, if that makes any sense. Maybe a short-term deal, but as far as being a long-term guy, I mean, Johnny Russell came into Kansas City, it feels like years ago now, man. It's insane now when I think about it, but yeah, has been with Kansas City his whole life as far as an MLS experience. And yeah, I mean, if you're in his position, you would want to just live the rest of your life in Kansas City, I guess, if you've never experienced any other city.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to feel about that part per se, but yeah, I think I think for at that age, bro, like to be honest, I think about it now, and this is another overarching theme I think of this episode was family, right?
Mhm.
Like family was a massive, massive part, both sides, both Parker and Russell, and you kind of heard Johnny talk about
Two
it, right? He's
different
like
types of families, a starting family and three
a
kids.
full, yeah, fully fledged family. Yeah, I think that like you heard Johnny say it, like I think he mentioned like when he talked about coming to the league, how like not just welcome but wanted he felt by Kansas City, and when you feel that welcome, that wanted, and you feel like it's going to be a comfortable place for your family to set up shop, it's almost a no-brainer. Right.
Mhm.
And I think when you do have a family, especially a fully fledged family like Johnny Russell, that's what matters the most, bro. I think like big market team doesn't matter. You want to keep playing as long as you possibly can, and you want your family to be comfortable. And I think that if those boxes get checked off, you can turn up day in and day out, regardless of what team you're playing for, regardless of how bad they might be or how playoff worthy that team might be, and just put in 110% day in and day out, regardless of age. And you kind of see that, bro, in training, going fucking hard. Vermes talking to his assistant about how he doesn't like being yelled at. I'm the same way, bro. Like if I go hard, I'm gonna go hard. Like I'm not gonna worry about injuries and things like that. Like I want to win. I'm gonna train accordingly. So you can tell he still wants it, but again, because he's a veteran, in that game towards the end against St. Louis, right? Like, just wasn't going to be featured as a starter because of his age. Was going to come off the bench, be an impact player, and he very much was that. So, yeah, man, I think, and again, fast forward to 2025. He's not part of that team anymore officially. But like I said before, Johnny Russell to me will be underappreciated. I think you look ahead to MLS in 10 years. I don't know how many SKC fans are going to be raving about Johnny Russell, but to me, he was like one of the lone bright spots in a very dark time for Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, definitely. I agree to that part, especially when other names that could be mentioned is Alan Pulido. I think you definitely jump over that guy. Um, he's now with Chivas. He's back with
Yep.
Chivas now.
Yep.
But the other player is Tim Parker, man. And I mean, what's funny is like as you don't necessarily like. I mean, obviously, as you get more and more into MLS, obviously, I already mentioned on this podcast like my origin story as to how I got into MLS, and obviously, it's not something that I stay up to date with all the teams. I just stay up to date with the Houston Dynamo, at least at this sense. But obviously, now that I'm actually having to cover multiple leagues, you learn a little bit more about these players and a little bit about their stories. So Tim Parker to me was a very much an unknown till well, I knew about him for Red Bull New York just because I knew he wanted to throw hands with one of the Dynamo players, and I think at that moment I fell in love with him. But he was dog.
Absolute
But
dog.
the whole journeyman, the MLS journeyman thing, which at first I was like, "What's this guy talking about? He's only been to New York and Houston. What's he like?" Unbeknownst to me, did not know his whole origin story. To find out that he was drafted by Vancouver,
Yep.
then went to Red Bull New York. Obviously, came to Houston, and he was very very vocal about his time at Houston, and I don't blame him. That was a very toxic environment at that time. And then obviously now he's in St. Louis. Um, Technically New England, if you want to say it now, but if you know what happens to Tim Parker, essentially, and then now he's back with Red Bull New York, but he very much wanted to be part of St. Louis. I mean, his family was literally starting in St. Louis, but so much significance. One, he was the opening day captain for St. Louis SC. He scores their first regular season goal for St. Louis SC, and not only that, but he scored their first postseason goal. Granted, they lost, but goal. Nonetheless, I mean, he is an MLS he was St. Louis's MLS veteran, which is something that we talk about, especially in MLS, that you need yeah, go get yourself those overseas players, the ones that are gonna bring you the money and the beautiful ball, whatever. But you need that MLS guy that just says, "Hey, we just need to punch this guy in the throat." Like, and that's what Tim Parker is. I mean, St. Louis loved him so much that they made a beer for him.
Yeah.
So the Parker Pilsner, which I hope is still a thing, because I don't think so, but it'd be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, bro, I felt when they went through and you saw how the trade happened. And again, I'll repeat what I said about Cardinal. It felt like a giant overreaction. It really did. Like it felt like, hey, Cardinel's out. Okay, cool. Well, we're probably gonna bring another coach in at some point. He'll probably want a younger roster, something that truly represents what an expansion market's all about: young, exciting, hungry, et cetera, et cetera. Anyone who's watched this league as long as we all have, you need veterans. You have to have them, right? Like in some way, shape, or form. Someone who's going to be a locker room guy, someone who's going to lead by example, someone who understands that through the dips, right, the peaks and the valleys, that you stay the course because there's still probably going to if things shake out your way, right? There's probably going to be moments for you to get back to where you want to be. And you don't always get that with youth. And that's why I thought it was very surprising. I get the logic from the sporting director. I can't remember his name. But I get the logic, right? Hey, he's already on the wrong side of 30. We're gonna go with someone that we can, kind of bring on to a longer term contract at that position, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. Like I understand logically what they're trying to do. I still don't know if it was the right decision. I think only time will tell. But dude, I mean, watching him like as someone who has a son who's almost 2 years old, I can only imagine what it would have been like if I had to go explain to my wife that I got traded, and that for the rest of the season I'm gonna be FaceTiming you from Boston, right? Like it. I mean, while your child is still in those extremely formative years, and so that by itself, bro. I mean, it was me watching it, it felt like a dagger, to the heart. And it's the reality of being in this business. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that shouldn't have happened. I mean, teams can do as they wish. But I think, again, had 2023 not panned out, had they just found a way to just slowly ascend to their peak as opposed to hitting it, ground running from the first season on, I think they would have been more patient with some of their players, some of their veterans, and like we talked about before, their actual coach.
Yeah, and I mean the sporting director for St. Louis, yeah, when he was saying young, long term contract, which is funny because he's it's Kessler that they traded for, like it's not like he's not much younger. I mean, yes, he's in the 20s, but he's not like we're not talking about like a 21-year-old or anything like that. Because I feel like that's how they were signing. Oh, young player, long-term deal, better commitment makes more sense. Also, like I was just waiting. He was like that typical startup company that eventually will throw out the word synergy, just even though no one knows what that means. Um, I still to this day have no idea what that means. Uh,
Hey, yo, facts though, bro, facts. Yeah, it just felt like I said. I think they treated it, and this is the difference, right? Major League Soccer's unlike any other league around the world. I think they treated it like this is a club in another league where maybe you're not one of the top dogs, one of the big market teams. So we're going to piece together our roster with young, hungry prospects that maybe we could ship out for a profit. And at a minimum, even if we're not successful on the table with results, we can become a profitable organization by shipping out young, hungry, promising talent. And that's respectable. I just don't know how possible that is in Major League Soccer. I think like as an example, right? Dallas has been doing that for fucking ever, and no championships to speak of, right? And I think at some point the fan base starts to, get a little bit impatient when that becomes your identity. So it's just something to be wary of if you're a brand new side, a brand new expansion team like St. Louis was back then or San Diego FC is now. I think, but again, I think if you want to compete from day one, I just can't think of a team in recent memory that was completely young all the way around and was able to win consistently. Like I think you just have to have veterans. The experience is wildly important.
no, yeah, super important. I think you need that combination of youth, but also experience. And I mean, there are some unique cases where your youth also happens to have experience, but That's all. That's also Lamine Yamal, and I don't think you're gonna get. It's not very often you're gonna get a player like that.
None of
Um,
those guys in MLS. No.
yeah. But yeah, I think it's always weird. Like I get it that if you want to build through youth and blah blah blah, but this ain't EA Sports FC. Like it's not gonna work out as well as you think it is. You need your savvy veterans. You need that grinded out guy that can. And it's one thing also because it's a lot of people, a lot of outsiders that are coming to St. Louis, and you need that person that can help get them adjusted to life in America. I mean, this guy was. I mean, this was an advertisement for Costco for crying out loud. The way he was talking about Costco, Tim Parker, man, I was like, dang, he's
Costco
not
goes
wrong
hard,
though.
bro. It goes hard. I love Costco.
He's not wrong though. I mean, I don't know about the vacation day part, which, yeah, I mean, literally everything's in Costco. Like,
Facts, bro. Facts. Again, I think Tim Parker now has probably obviously right accepted it. And again, I still don't get me wrong. He's not like I'm not sitting here saying he's the best center back in the league or the best veteran center back in the league. Like I just think he adds value,
mm,
right? I think maybe there could have been a way to keep him around if you restructure the extension of his contract. If you, because again, if you finding someone who's got the emotional attachment to St. Louis, and for Parker, it's for family reasons, and it's also for the what he goes down in the history books for. The first regular season goal for St. Louis City, the first postseason goal for St. Louis City.
man was on the
Um,
billboard.
yeah, bro. I mean, at one point was quite literally the face of the organization, and you feel like a guy like that is going to do whatever it takes to represent the badge well, both on the field and off. To me, the pros of keeping him outweigh the cons. But again, right, I think we're having a different conversation all the way around if St. Louis doesn't end up as the first seed in 2023.
Yeah, I think this is a whole. Yeah, you're right, and I think also if it wasn't for the fact that they just weren't able to at least turn some draws to wins, this could have been a whole other story. It would have been one of those like, hey, we didn't really have to do much change. But in reality, you do need to make. I'm not saying get rid of players, but I mean like you need to add a piece or two. Um, it's always funny how we hype up, St. Louis because they have Roman Berkey, someone that was once very much revered from his time at Borussia Dortmund, which I don't know why we do that. I mean, it's not like they really want anything, but hey, he's still a solid goalkeeper nonetheless.
True.
I'm not hating to be hating, say, but I mean, yes, he is a very much a top goalkeeper. I'm not saying that he's not, but it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, we're praising this guy, but I mean, we're giving up a lot of goals, and I mean, yes, defensively, that's probably one of the reasons behind it, but. Yeah, I think Tim Parker, I think was just looked at as like an easy scapegoat. Contract negotiations was happening. Like, oh, we could just not give him a contract and then get something out of him, which was Henry Kessler, which can't really tell you much about the guy.
Yeah, I couldn't either, to be honest, man. And again, I only know what I know about Tim Parker playing against Houston as long as we did, right, while he was there. And I knew of his mentality, of his personality. Um, I don't know if they truly leveled up by making that trade. Again, I think they made it simply because they wanted to have a more youthful side. And sure, again, to each their own. I just felt like it didn't really work out in their favor for the remainder of 2024. And we still have it's yet to be determined for 2025. Right. So they do have plenty of defenders in that roster. Don't get me wrong. But we'll see. I mean, time will tell. Right now, they're in a good spot in the table, but we're 4 weeks into the season. So, and again, in the dog days of summer, that's when experience tends to shine more than anything else because of the fact that multiple competitions get thrown in. Leagues Cup, we're halfway through Open Cup at that point. And in addition to that, right, when you're traveling all across this country, and if you're traveling into the southern parts of this country, it's hot as hell. And when you have someone like Tim Parker who's experienced multiple markets all across this country, who can help coach some of the youngsters in terms of how to think about some of the fan bases they're going to be in front of, how to deal with some of the elements in some of these markets and cities. I feel like the pros outweigh the cons, but we'll see.
Yeah. So this episode technically featured two games. You had obviously the Sporting Kansas City St. Louis game, which was a 3-3 draw.
Yep.
Notes that I took away from it was, oh shit, a Polito goal. Um, and Klaus is a dog. I mean,
Klaus is a fucking dog. I remember that tackle, by the way. I remember it.
that
I
was a straight
remember,
body check. I
bro.
mean,
It was. And I'll stand by this. It was not a foul. I remember SKC fans screaming from the rooftops that it should have been a foul. I think, bro, I think that homie just got weight roomed. I think it was shoulder to shoulder, and he completely just truck sticked the hell out of that defender,
yeah,
and
it
and
was.
they paid for it.
Yeah, it was solid. Also the equalizer was very nasty. That was also another thing I took from it. I also would say this is by far the worst locker room scenes I've ever seen in my life. SKC, you literally had a player showing his ass in like the background. Um, y'all can call me sus, but they blurred like they literally like make you like look where it is in the direction because it's like blurred. So like there's literally a dude switching underwear at halftime, which I have questions already from that one, but hey, people got their routines, people got their
Hey, bro.
ways to do matches. Luckily, we do not know what player what it was, but yeah, the ass scene was very diabolical. And St. Louis, that was by far the most depressing post game speech. Like honestly, if I was in there, I'd fire Carnell too. So
I just don't think he's that guy. And that's what I'm saying. I think every manager is a little bit different. I, I'm not gonna say you're saying he was like a marshmallow, right? But like he's just I don't see him being the rah guy. I don't see even as a player. Maybe I don't even see it. Like I just think his personality is there. Maybe Cardinel's a little bit more of a tactician. Maybe he's just more logical in his approach. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't the greatest locker room season considering it's a rivalry. I was expecting a little bit more. It's kind of crazy to say. I feel like Vermes might even be a better motivator than Cardinel. But I mean, all in all, yeah,
which
the
I
ass
didn't
scene
even
was.
listen to it because I was distracted by an ass. So, so
Sex sells, bro. Sex sells. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Again, I didn't feel the rivalry in this one the way that I felt it with the Hell is Real Derby. Like
yeah.
I felt that shit. Like I was just like, dude, to live in Ohio, this is actually insane. Um, to be anywhere between Missouri and Kansas, it probably is a crazy rivalry if you're there in person. Didn't feel it as much in this episode. However, they still are shouting from the rooftops that, or they're having the debate as to who is the proper soccer capital of America. I don't think it's either of them, but yeah, I mean, they can keep having that debate all they want to.
Yeah, and then the other game was the New England St. Louis game, which obviously this was the Tim Parker post trade game. 2-2 draw, shocking. Who had that in their bingo card. Um, I will say though, Kessler did score a goal in this game, so I guess win if you're a St. Louis SC supporter. Like, he's already paying off in the trade. I guess I don't know how he is right now, but I don't even know. I don't even know if he's still on Kansas City's like lineup. It's Kansas City, St. Louis. Jesus Christ, I mix up those two teams. Um, I will say this from personal experience, as someone that has have made the bus trip from St. Louis to Sporting Kansas City, that is the dullest drive you'll ever have in your life. And I wasn't even driving; I was on the bus. But yeah, that was. I don't know how people can do it. Applause to the St. Louis players that were traveling to Kansas City because it's not an easy pathway, man.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think the drive between like Dallas and Austin or Dallas and Houston is the most sexy. I mean, you definitely, if you're going to Houston, you pass through, um,
Yeah, but you get a
some neighboring
Bucky's.
towns. That's true. That's true. You do get Bucky's. That is fire. If you guys haven't experienced Bucky's at home, man, you gotta come to Texas and get one. It is the cleanest, biggest, most Texan gas station you'll ever be at in your life, 100%. Um, but I think that like, yeah, I don't know, man. Again, for one reason or another, I think the producers of Onside really tried to sell this rivalry while storytelling from some of the biggest veterans on each side. It just didn't come across as ruthless, if you will, as other rivalries that we know across this league.
Yeah, no, I was trying to find a moment in this rivalry, at least between the two clubs, to make me feel like, oh, there's a bit of a rivalry, but it actually came from the Kansas City Royals owner when he called the owner of St. Louis. Well, he said that I don't know if it's true or not, but he said like he called it like, hey, what do you want me to do with these
Oh yeah.
with with the Kansas City, Sporting Kansas City fans from St. Louis? And I'm just like, that's it. That that was the moment where I was like, this sums up this rivalry is an owner of a baseball team just
Yeah.
coming up with the worst dad joke humanly possible.
And it probably summarizes sporting Kansas City all the way around, bro. For being honest. Like it just I don't know, man. Like again, not a joke, right? But like I don't know. They've been the laughing stock of MLS now for like I don't know how many seasons in a row recently. Sure, they had that Open Cup and whatnot. That's fucking awesome. But like outside of that, there's just not much to talk about with this side, and it's kind of reflected in the ownership a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Cavincio's already been checked out. The season just started, and he's already checked out. So,
I think he disappeared. I haven't seen that dude in I don't know how long, and I don't blame him either.
yeah. So, all in all, this episode was it was different. But I will say, out of all the episodes we've watched so far, this is definitely it's at the bottom of the totem pole. If that makes any sense for me, at least.
Of the four, yeah, but again, I also think that like the first three were bangers. Like,
Yeah.
it's tough, right? Like the storytelling was so unique for Ricky Puig and Galaxy versus Miami, for the Hell is Real Derby, for Kevin Sullivan, the next, Messi or the next prodigy to come out of the US. Like it's a pretty high bar to live up to. I think they tried to tug at the heartstrings a little bit with this one, and I think it worked. Again, if you're not in a place where you have a family yet, maybe not, maybe you felt like this was a little bit um going too far away from the soccer potentially. I mean, who knows? But I appreciated it. Someone in a different place of life now. I feel like this is something that could potentially actually bring in and relate to fans who aren't tuning into Onside just for the soccer.
No, yeah. You talked about that scene for with Tim Parker. I'm having to watch his kid like through the phone, and you're right. I mean, obviously it's a sports thing, but I have no connection to sports, being that I was never once an athlete. But I will say though, sometimes when you have to make, and it's kind of similar with Tim Parker, is like you go through this career path and unfortunately you don't know you don't have control where you end up, right? Like you go where you go, and you just have to say yes because you're under you're under a contract, right? And for me, I remember 18 years old, not thinking of what was going to happen when I went and shipped out and joined the military. But for me, and at that time, my sister was pregnant with our first niece, our family's first niece. This is my mom's first grandchild, all these things. And I remember I didn't think much of it. I just know I was, gonna go do what I'm supposed to do, USMC, you signed a motherfucking contract kind of thing. And, I was gonna do my whole service thing. And I think what hit me, at least with my niece, obviously it's different from, you have your own child, but
Yeah.
um was seeing pictures of my family doing all these things with my niece, seeing her first steps, seeing her speak, seeing her interact with everything, her exploring the world through her lenses, and I'm like, I'm over here in this barracks room, uh, you know, playing Call of Duty or going to work, and you're just kind of at that point thinking like, am I? And maybe Tim Parker maybe had that same like thing where you're like, am I doing the right thing? This is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? But it sucks when you missed out. Like, and for me, I missed my niece's first 5 years of her life. And yeah, I got home. I went. I got to go home. I got to go on leave and all that. But to her, I was a complete stranger. Like, and I mean, obviously, she's little. She doesn't. She knows that I'm just not a guy she normally sees, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was not easy. I will tell you that it is not an easy life. I don't wish that on anyone. But obviously that's what you sign up for, kind of in a way. And unfortunately for especially, I think it's worse for Tim Parker, obviously because of the fact like you settle in, right? You settle into the city, you're thinking this is gonna be your forever home, and then they ship you out to Boston, and you're not gonna have your family move because obviously it's like what the remainder of the season why are you gonna have the move, kind of thing. And I was just like, it sucks. And I mean, imagine if I actually did have a family while I was in the service. Like, hey guys, guess what? We're going to freaking Okinawa, Japan now. Pack your bags. I know you got to go to school, but that Uncle Sam don't care, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
I think this is the part of soccer or football or even professional sports that fans, especially fans who don't have families, which is a lot of them, right? The younger crowd don't get. They never get, right? You see it all the time in the comments on the timeline when, it looks like some high profile player decides to move back home or back to a league that may be inferior to where they were, for personal reasons or like whatever the case may be. It's like, guys, bro, at some point, while yeah, you want to have all the ambition in the world, while you want to, say yes to every opportunity, regardless of where it takes you, regardless of how far it takes you, at some point, man, things just become bigger than the game. And while you want to play the game as long as you possibly can, nothing trumps the family card, bro. Like it legitimately does keep you grounded in a very big way, of course, physically, but mentally. And like, I don't know. This is why, again, this is something that I didn't understand until I became a dad, is that, every decision you make from there on out just impacts everybody around you. And so, I'm telling you, bro, like when I was watching Tim Parker have that conversation with his wife, with his newborn son, over the phone, and his son recognizing him a little bit, but like that's all you really get. I mean, it's heartbreaking, bro. Like I could not imagine a world where I had to spend, let's say, 4+ months, 5+ months in a completely different place all across the country while my kid sat there and grew up. Like I could not imagine it. And so much so that I would debate. You know how Tim Parker talks about it after the Houston stint, whether or not this is actually for him. I would kind of be on those lines, but more from the perspective of the trade. Like, this might be my last season in MLS. Like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep just being traded, not getting any say, surprised like this, surprising my family. I'm not going to uproot them. They have their own, they have a stable life here. Um, I think it would definitely cause me to start having some bigger picture conversations with myself as to reprioritize what's really important in my life.
Yeah, and you mentioned that phone call. It actually reminds me of a phone call that I made. I remember I just got back to North Carolina, where I was stationed at North Carolina, and this is one of the times where, like, I'm playing with my niece, and now she's like, "Oh, I know who this guy is," kind of thing, and we're having fun. I'm taking her to the park like almost every day, and I remember, I called my, I was calling my family, let them know, hey, I'm back in North Carolina, things like that, and my niece is like, "Oh, can I talk to Theo?" And then she's like, "Oh, am I gonna see you tomorrow?" And I'm like, "No."
Mm,
And then I remember like be trying to put a brave face and no, Theo's gotta go back to work and
mm.
serve his country, but hey, few next year or whenever I get a chance to go on leave, we'll play again, we'll pick it up right after, and then like to hang up and just be like, fuck, it's back to this, like
It's rough, bro. It's rough. Like I don't wish that shit on anybody. And like it's again, it makes because you feel like a dick, right? You feel like you're choosing something over your family. That's really what
exactly.
it feels like. Because that's honestly, bro, that's how kids see it. They don't see it
Yeah.
any other way. It
Yeah,
is
they're like,
plain as
man, this
day for
guy's
them.
choosing country over
Yeah.
me. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, and for Tim, obviously it was a little bit different. Like he's legitimately, his son will probably never remember that, right? It'll never. And when by the time his son can have short term, long term memory, I'm sure Tim will be there every step of the way, but you know it, right?
Hmm.
And to top it off, you're just putting this all the responsibility, everything in terms of day to day on your partner, on your wife. And so, again, I feel like I do that enough as it is, just how busy I am with shit on a day to day basis. And so, to do that, like, again, to go through those steps, bro, it was hard. It's not like I was sitting there getting emotional while watching this, but it was hard not to empathize because I'm like, dude, I don't even know how I would begin to have that conversation with my wife. And I just got called in and said, "Hey, I have no choice in the matter. I'm going to be shipping out. I'm not going to be around for the next few months. That could be very pivotal months for my son, my family, my wife. And she's just going to have to make do. And we're going to try and keep communicating all along the way." Like, I don't envy anybody in that position. But at the same time, it's hard to, I think it's hard for fans to feel bad because at the end of the day, these guys are living a dream that many fans would do anything for.
True. Now, obviously, even though I ranked this pretty low, the Tim Parker element is definitely what I will say has a lot of value to this episode because I think this is one of those things where if you're an outsider gets to finally see what comes with a trade. Like not every trade is a positive thing. there's always two sides to every story when it comes to like these things. And for Tim Parker, he literally wants to stay put. He wants to be there. He wants to be part of this club. He wants to be part of its history. And I mean, technically, he is part of the history. But I mean, like this is where he wanted to settle in and live the rest of his life. Because I mean, the dude's only like 32 years old, and
Yep.
so and for the club to take that away from him, um, it's unfortunate. And then obviously for him, it's he's starting his family, he's starting his life. And so, like, I think that this is one of those compelling stories where the people that are like, I don't know why he's complaining. He gets to kick a ball. He gets paid to kick a ball, and it's like, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure that they don't necessarily discredit that. They realize. I'm sure everybody realizes it that day where they're like, hey, I'm getting paid to do this, kind of thing. Where like, even though the joke I made when I was in the Marine Corps, I was like, I literally get paid to take a shit. So I mean, like it's kind of like as far as obviously the military life is nothing glamorous, but obviously the athlete's life, yes, they have this life that's better, that's viewed better than most because of being paid to play a game. But at the end of the day, they're still people. They're still going to be dads. They're still going to be sons. They're still going to be, cousins, brothers, siblings, all those things. Like at the end of the day, they're still people, and they also have their attachments.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say now, right, fast forward in 2025, I mean, Parker's back in Jersey, knows the market, knows the team, knows the fan base. I'm sure found a way to kind of make it all work with his family as well. And look, bro, at the end of the day, like in these twilight years of his career, I don't think he's got any minutes yet being behind that stellar back line with the Red Bulls. So, I mean, right now, bro, I'm not saying that he doesn't want those minutes, but his life might even be a little more cush right now, as he continues to focus on, kind of raising up his family and making sure that they're settled and comfortable. So, good for him. 'Cause again, right, first of all, just going to that team, the Revs, when he got traded. Like it's one thing to be traded and be like, oh shit, my whole life is kind of being uprooted. But at the same time, if you're going to a team where you're even more likely to win, going to be more competitive right off the bat, like going to be a part of like championship conversations. I mean, there's some silver lining there, right? It's like I'm going to come into a team where I can, where I'm going to be challenged and we're going to be competing for things right away. To go to the Revs, bro, like it's like fucking bad to worse. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I don't know. It
Yeah,
would have felt like a huge kick in the stomach.
that would suck because you're talking about going into which I mean, let's be honest, like if you're in a losing culture, your environment isn't great. Like
No.
the environment of the club is not going to be great. So not only do you have that, but then at the end of the day, you're coming into this empty, I don't want to say house, maybe like a townhome, I don't condo maybe, but you're going to an empty home because why your family's back in St. Louis, now probably in Jersey, but yeah, like I think that's like there's no at least like a good escape, if you will. Like, I think if you're like if somehow he would have got traded to the Galaxy, right? Like, yeah, I'm away from my family, but hey, this team's really good. I might win a championship out of it, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
obviously, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it wasn't. So, like I said, there's so many scenarios that I guess could have played out. And again, St. Louis did what they felt was best for them as an organization. So, I think ultimately it's probably worked out for the best now in hindsight, knowing what we know about where Tim Parker's ended up, kind of where he is in his career. I still think that if someone goes down that back line for the Red Bulls, he's a pretty reliable backup to just call upon and kind of slot right in. So. And again, he's been on that team before. He knows the market, the fan base pretty well. So all in all, things might have worked out well in the end. St. Louis, of course, is in a pretty decent position to kick off 2025. We'll see how the season continues to pan out for them. But ultimately, yeah, it was definitely. I feel like watching this episode back, and I'd be curious for anybody else's perspective. I feel like St. Louis got made out to be the bad guy a little bit here, and I think it's hard not to really, really resonate with Tim. I think Tim Parker probably has more fans now than he did.
Who is that guy?